Hello and welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage, Monday afternoon edition, August 19th, 2024. I did not expect another video on this Ford 9-inch rear end build for my 49 Chevrolet pickup. However, as the title states, mistakes happen. When I shot the video assembling the axles into the housing and talking about axles, I started with the long side. I unboxed the axles. I've bought, let's call it a dozen sets from Quick Performance over the years. Never had a fitment problem. They're very thorough in the measurements they ask. So I start with the long axle, which is the passenger side, and I'm holding it on the flange, trying to keep the weight off the seal that I've driven into the housing. And I put it in, and typically, if you're paying attention, when you get the wheel bearing, axle bearing, close to the housing end, within 3/4 of an inch or an inch, it'll start to engage in the splines in here. In this case, with a Detroit locker, it is splined all the way through. There's no center pin, unless you see my hand. There's no center pin in the differential. And I happened to hit it just right. I wasn't really paying attention or never felt it engage the spline. It just went all the way in like you were just tossing it in there. But I could feel it was engaged. It went right in, and I bolted this side up, and I paused before I finished the whole job to shoot a video. I shut the camera off, after working on the video and posting it. I go to put the driver's side in, and it goes all the way in and still spins, will not engage the splines. So I measure, I can see that this axle, the long axle, there's still a couple inches left of spline for the other side to engage in. However, the differential's 5 or 6 inches wide, so it's shoved in there a long ways. In reality, what actually happened is both side gears in the differential, the splines must have been perfectly aligned, and I went through the passenger side and into the driver's side with the passenger side axle. And now the other side's too short. So my suspicions were correct when I called Quick Performance the next morning, and I believe that was Friday morning. I called them and I said, for the first time ever, my axles don't fit, and here's what I think the problem is. I think you sent me axles for a scented pinion, and I have a scented housing. And, with your name, they know who the salesman you spoke to, and I'm sure it happens when you have amateurs measuring. They know what they're doing. They're going to give you the right stuff. And he says, you didn't talk to me. You need to talk to your original salesperson, and I'll have him call you back. But, I'm sure we'll figure out, what happened, and we'll work through it. No problem. So I said, sounds great. A few minutes later, I get a phone call from the original salesman, and he said, I haven't replayed the phone call, but, to establish blame, because they want to, he said, but, let's just fix the problem. He says, if you'll pay to ship the axles back, we'll fix whatever's wrong. He says, judging by the dimensions, you're right. You have axles for a scented pinion. Now it's just a matter of whose mistake it is. And I said, well, wait a minute. I don't care whose mistake it is. I want to keep the axles. I just want another set. I have everything to build another rear end housing. And the axles that I got last week have 4 inches of spline on either side. Now this is a 62-inch wheel-to-wheel housing. I don't need one that wide. However, 58, 59, and 60-inch housing, the ability to build one of those is very possible with the axles I have. I'll just build it scented pinion, no problem. He asked, and he said from an engineering standpoint, Their rule of thumb is you need a minimum of only 7/8 of an inch engagement in the side gear from your axle. So I'd round that up to at least an inch. And that leaves me 3 inches to cut off either axle if I want to. So that allows me in the future to build a rear end, you know, of what, 56 to 60 inches wide easily. Well, don't quote me on that, but let's do the math on it. It's housing width plus 2.5 inches aside, 5 inches. So in this case, I had a 57-inch housing. It made a 62-inch wheel to wheel. So, and with those axles, I could recreate that or go narrower by shortening the axles. So that's what I'm gonna do. So while I had them on the phone, I bought another pair of early big Ford housing ends that take the seal, because while I was hunting up parts for this one, you can't see my hands, but you're probably better off, I found two more sets of early big Ford brakes. One are all rusty, and that's actually the ones I'm working on just to work my way through them. Time is on my side, so I got the backing plates. Well, only one backing plate at this point. It's the only room I have for it. Soaking in my evaporust, which seems to have lost its potency a little bit. It's not exactly eating the rust like it did originally. I don't know its shelf life on that stuff, but hey, it's in this soaking. I had mentioned I already had another one of these. This one's a little bit better. It has some cut marks on it where they cut off probably the panade bar bracket. I went ahead and bought from Stock Car Steel another piece of 36-inch piece of 3 1/4 OD 219 wall DOM tubing. Same thing I built this housing out of. So now I'm not going to build one on speculation, probably. I'm just going to have all the pieces in a weekend or a few nights or a whole day. If I ever had a whole day to work on it, I can, you know, assemble the rear end complete, you know, axles, brakes, and for a center section, not necessarily for this housing, but while I had Quick Performance on the phone, I told them, and I've done this before on my Model A. I'm not so sure I did the Model A one correctly because it's really tight, but I had in that, and I have another 28 spline Ford track lock positive traction, clutch type differential, but it's 28 spline. I want to convert that, and I did it very inexpensively through Quick Performance last time. I said, 15 years ago, you sold me stuff to convert my 28 spline track lock to a 31 spline. He said, yep, we got all that stuff right here. So they were able to send me those parts to change that track lock over. My new housing ends, a couple extra seals, and coming hopefully this week is a complete another axle package that will actually fit this one so I can finish it. So looking forward to that and getting it off my bench. Through an odd chain of events, I have two frames for future projects outside, carefully stored outside. They are painted flat black anyway. One has been mocked up under several vehicles. I've owned it twice. This is the third time I've owned it. Nobody's ever built the whole vehicle out of it. But it was originally built with a suicide mount front end, and it had a Speedway 4-inch spring behind tube axle, complete with brakes and everything. And I actually assembled for the guy and put on that frame for him before I owned it the first and second and now third time. The tube axle itself never made its way home, and it went on another project, and I have that frame outside. It's quite a story in itself. This seems kind of convoluted, but long story short, a couple weeks ago, I actually got the front end back as well. It was missing the spring and the hardware and the mounts and everything. So while I was on the Speedway site buying a couple other things, I had some points I'd saved up because they have a points program. When you buy stuff, you get to save some money. And I went ahead and bought the missing spring and pieces that I need to put that silly axle under probably the first frame I spoke of. It's going potentially under my 47 Ford pickup cab that I have. I need to build a bed. I have like a 36 Ford grill for it. I have the stock front end as well. I think I want to put, you know, open engine, maybe half a hood, and a different grill on it. I'm not big on the, you know, rat rods with tractor grills and stuff, but not even saying it's going to be a rat rod. I'm actually going to put probably an 850 cage in it. It has a narrow Dana 60 with a 4-link. It's all this stuff's brand new. It's going to be an odd little truck. I'm going to put the blown small block in it. I don't know if I mentioned that. At least, you know, I want to kind of make it cartoonish looking. You know, we'll see. One of the many projects I dream of and I'm always collecting parts for, so. Again, I'm not a big fan of that particular tube axle, but I have it, it's complete. I have a couple I-beam axles that I built last fall right here on the channel if you want to check it out. Each one of those intended for each frame, so. I guess we have options in the future, so. That wraps it up for tonight. I'm gonna go maybe grill some meat outside, and hope you had a wonderful weekend and a good start to your work week. Take it easy.